Guys, today's video is brought to you by Fiverr. Fiverr is an online marketplace that connects freelancers of every industry to buyers. Whether you need a graphic designer to make a company logo, or you just need a video editing service that's going to be quick and reliable, Fiverr is full of the best freelancers in the world to help you get exactly what you need. And for my viewers only, follow the link in the description below and get 10% off today.
You got me?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, cool. I'm off just the regular
Yeah,
mic
I almost wonder if there was something on my end that wasn't helping.
all
So,
right, let me see this just for shits and giggles. Then hold on.
yeah, try it one more
Let's
time.
see if this works. Hear me?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't want to admit this, but I know what happened and it was on my end.
What was it?
I had the output as my microphone and not as my speakers. And so no
Oh,
shit,
got you. Okay.
nothing's coming through. I didn't want to say it.
So how's it sound? Does it sound better? Does it sound better like this?
It sounds great. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
I have to clear the air because I saw you at the gym today and I was kind of on my phone and you were in a weird angle. And I felt like one of those like boys in high school that sees a girl he likes and then doesn't say anything and then texts her right after. So my bad. I should have said hi.
Hell yeah. It's all good, bro. I'm used to that. All the girls want to say hi but never do, you know?
No, that's not what I meant.
No, I got you.
How's your day going though?
It's good, man. Busy morning, but like my day is pretty much scheduled out. You know what I mean? Like I try to schedule everything out like almost to the hour. So it's like almost systematic. You know, I know where to be and what to do and kind of understand, like just live off my day planner. You know what I mean?
Dude, those things are a lifesaver. I had to write down. I mean, this is a big a big podcast for me, and I still had to write it down. Like that's like something that I feel like I would have to write down dates if I, didn't have my fiance to tell me when we're going out.
For sure. I mean, it's important though, bro. Like, you get distracted, things happen throughout the day. You forget, like, oh shit, I totally forgot about this meeting or this appointment. So, like for me, usually, I'll write a script, possibly the night before. Like, okay, I know what I have to do, and then I'll leave gaps in between, like 30-minute gaps. So in case we run over or something happens, gives me time for compensate for travel and everything else. But just I think over the years trying to be more systematic when it comes to the schedule, and it's helped me a lot. It's still a work in progress, but it's still helped me a lot.
When you plan things out, like if you're working with a guy or if you're planning out practice, do you plan it out ahead of time or do you kind of go in, see how the guy feels, different stuff, or are you pretty baseline with everyone?
No, I'm very, very systematic when it comes to, like, let's say Dan Ige, for example, in camp. It's very specific on what we might see in the fight, what we're trying to accomplish in the fight, and a lot of reps in that. So very rarely will we waver too far, I guess, off the beaten path, because to me, a lot of times that becomes wasted reps, right? Where to me, reps are a premium during camp, and then we call it meat and potatoes. We're just staying on the meat and potatoes of what we're trying to accomplish in camp. Now we just worked on Monday, me and Dan outside of camp, bro. We were just literally messing around the whole time, like having fun, playing, trying new things. And I think that's where it's important to really take in a lot of, I guess, dialogue with your fighter. It's like, hey, what do you want to work on, or what are some things like you've been? And he said, man, I want to, get my left kick going a little better. I want to set it up better. So okay, cool. So it gives us some things to work on outside of camp. And then now, let's say that tool is far more refined. The next fight we get in, then we plug that into an asset as something we can accomplish in the fight. Like, hey, your left kick is firing. You don't show it a whole lot in your fighting career. Now it's something that might become unexpected to our opponent, so we can add that in. So that's, I think, it's very important to really add some things outside of camp to add value. But when it comes to practices, like our team practice on Mondays, I'll usually sit down on Sunday morning or Monday afternoon and kind of write out the schedule of what I'll do, or the format of that class, right? Because like when you come to Mondays, the only Mondays that are really like, you know what you're going to do is when it comes to big club Mondays, right? Like everything
Right.
else, you might be like, oh, dude, what are we doing today? I kind of like that vibe of where like we don't really know what you're going to get, but we know it's going to be a hard practice and it's going to
Right.
change Monday to Monday. So, but I also just don't like throw shit against the wall either and be like, hey, maybe we'll do this today. I have a plan of attack and kind of understand how I want to approach it, and then go from there. And then like, you know, let's say like Cody Stamen's fighting somebody. And Cody was fighting that guy that was doing a lot of deep half guard.
Right.
So I'll mix in deep half guard in our positions throughout that day. So he's getting some of those extra reps that we might need.
Gotcha. Where do you implement fun? Now, I'm not saying that because like practices aren't fun, but I'm saying as far as like a mindset, because everybody, like you were a football guy. Most fun days for me playing football is when coaches lined up the bags and we like had Oklahoma drill or something like that.
Yeah.
And it always seemed like, you can't do it every day because there is business to be done. But with everybody being on different schedules, how do you implement like that? Hey, this guy's got to enjoy coming in or they're gonna burn out.
Yeah, bro, that's a great question. I think it's something that I still have to be better at is
Hmm.
more like barbecues, like when we did like the viewing party, we
The
kind of got
fights and stuff.
everybody together, the fights at the gym. That's going to build the camaraderie,
Yeah.
and it kind of like lets the machismo ego down, and we all got to kind of come in and bring the families in, and you get to meet the kids. And it should have that vibe because at the end of the day too, like we're a big family, but as serious as we are when it comes to pro practice, it is nice to play some spike ball before, or like
Right.
wiffle ball, or throw the football around, or kind of lighten the mood, and everything else. And like sometimes during practice, we used to do dodgeball all the time. Like, hey,
Yeah.
all right, guys, instead of cardio, line it up. It's dodgeball right now. So those are some things that like I have dodgeballs sitting in the closet. Maybe that's some things we should bring back because you're right, bro. It does. It helps kind of lighten the mood and make things a little bit more fun when it comes to practices.
It seems like whenever I've been in rooms, like whether it was wrestling or, now with MMA, like it disguises the hard work. It's almost like when you have music in and you're not really, or you listen to a podcast and you're working out, you don't really think about like your muscles hurting or your lungs burning. Like you're like, oh, I'm listening to music, but you're putting sometimes more output in.
For
And
sure.
I was curious what, like how you implement that and
I
like,
think the environment
yeah.
becomes contagious, right?
Oh,
Like
100%.
so we'll put on some good tunes, some good music,
Yep.
turn it up a little bit, but then like one or two people will have that, like, Chris Curtis, for example, he'll that woo, that
Yeah.
reaction, and that you can feel the goosebumps, bro. You're like, hell
Right.
yeah, like let's fucking go.
Yeah.
And then another guy kind of has that same mentality or that same energy, and then you can feel it like ripple throughout the gym,
Right.
especially like when I say like on Mondays, like, all right, guys, time, hands up. First guy yells is Brad. It's like, woo, yeah, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
And like then we're all jogging and we're all kind of in that, I don't know, that high, that rush, that sync. So yeah, man, I really predicate my practices off that high energy and that enthusiasm, I think,
Yeah.
and I think it really starts with me and Nate or whoever else is on the mat. You're not going to get a lot of enthusiasm from Nate, but that
Right.
environment I think is important, and it makes it contagious and it makes it fun all at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Nate's got that January 6th enthusiasm sometimes.
Fuck yeah, he does. Fuck yeah, he does. Oh, bro, that's good.
uh, no, I was, do you think that comes from like your football background? Because I feel like football coaches and like, dude, football strength coaches and just coaches in general are some of the most hoorah, like amped up MFers on the planet, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Like I come from like two lines of, my dad was very, I would say quiet, but very cerebral, very much a thinker, thought ahead of time with things. Well, I wouldn't say he was by any means soft spoken, but he was the complete antithesis to my uncle, who was the strength and conditioning coach, the linebacker coach,
Yeah.
who fucking headbutted me into smithereens. Every time I had my helmet on, he's fucking headbutting you. So I try to find that almost kind of balance between my dad and my uncle. Whereas like, when it was time to work with my uncle, it was like, fuck yeah, bro, we're gonna get after it today. And then like you work with my dad and it was very much like student and teacher.
Right.
Like, all right, I'm sitting down, I'm gonna learn X's and O's. And so I think having that fine balance between the two has definitely helped me transition over into MMA, kind of in keeping that almost strength and conditioning football mentality.
What how did you get into coaching? What is like, because you were a football guy. I know some of the story, but I don't know the whole story. Do you have like a 2-minute rundown or?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I thought that football was going to be my path. I knew that I definitely wanted to coach and at some capacity. I never really imagined it to be MMA, but I always felt like I was going to be in the coaching profession, definitely football. When I got out of college, I came back home, and my uncle took the head coaching position at El Dorado, and he brought me on right away on the staff, and basically helping out with the offense, passing coordinator, things like that. They ran a certain type of run offense, but didn't really implement much passing game. So he's like, "Hey, I want you to come in and help out with the passing game." So I had a lot of fun doing that. But we had a guy there that was he was pretty good. His name was Steven Jackson. So we ran the ball a lot, and Steven Jackson was a very good running back, and then went on to the NFL and did his thing. So, but it helped me kind of cut my teeth into coaching and understanding what coaching kids was like, what being coached by my uncle still, and everything else, and learning the nuances of, I guess, being a young coach at the time. So when it came to MMA, I started coming here to Extreme Couture in 2006, and never really expecting to even get into anything that has to do with fighting. I just wanted to learn and further grow my knowledge about really whatever. But moreover, bro, it was, for me, it was about being around like-minded individuals. I was tired of being around like the bar scene, the bar industry, the Vegas nightlife, and all that stuff. And I don't know. It was almost my own checks and balances. Like, man, I need to be around some hard motherfuckers, and really check myself. And that's what I found in Extreme Couture. So, the coaching side of it, I think, was a byproduct of me just being here,
Yeah.
day in and day out, bro, hours on end. Like, when you came to Extreme Couture, I was here, and I
Right.
would never leave until I had to go to work. And then I had my daughter McKenna. She's 15 now, bro. I used to bring McKenna in the carrier, so I would time it to where, like, I'd feed her. I knew when her nap was, so I'd be able to train for like an hour and a half. I'd feed her again, right? Come back, and she would nap, and I'd have her on the mats. Like, me and Dennis would be training day in and day out. Dennis didn't drive at the time, so I'd drive Dennis. I'd pick him up. I mean, it was like me, McKenna, and Dennis. Like that was our little family while my wife was working. And then I would work at the bar at night. I'd go into to work at night around 7 p.m. and work from 7 to midnight and come back and do it all over again.
Now, did you have any, you said when you came in, you didn't have any intentions. Did you ever have any aspirations of fighting or anything, or did you just fall in love with coaching and that was it?
I kind of did, to be honest with you. Like, for one, I wanted to, that experience. And
Right.
so what happened was, when Dennis was fighting, I think at the Riviera at the time, he was fighting on a small show out here, and the promoter came in the gym to check up on Dennis, and me and Dennis were actually training at the time. So, and he sees me, and he's like, "Hey, man, do you fight? Do you have any fights?" I'm like, "No, I don't have any fights at all." But this was back in a time too, Christian, where there wasn't amateurs. This was,
Mhm.
you fought and you were pro. There was no Tough Enough. There was
Right,
at
right,
least no amateurs that were going on in Vegas at the
right.
time. And he offered me to fight Ryan Bader. So I knew who Ryan Bader was from football, because he was up in McQueen, up in Reno. And then I was a year older than him, and then I went to Reno to go play football. So I knew of him. I think he was the defensive player of the year the next year after me. So I knew who he was, but didn't really know his background or his pedigree. But so I go home, and I remember asking my wife, and she's like, "Dude, she's like this pregnant with McKenna. She's like about to bust." And I was like, "Hey, babe, like, I got to offer to fight this guy Ryan Bader. I kind of know him. He played defense over at McQueen, wrestled at ASU." And she's like, "Are you out of your fucking mind?" She's like, and she was like terrified that for me to go and fight. And thank God she felt that way, because he would have killed me and put me in a wheelchair probably. But it was never really my dream or passion. Like, I never got into this sport going like, I want to be a pro fighter. My whole path was going in the fire department. Like, I was going to
Mhm.
school, I was in paramedic school, I was doing
Right,
all these things, and this was a byproduct of it. Like, I was able
right,
to train, but it never really was like, this is what I want to become.
right.
And to be honest with you, bro, like, you and I both see this on a day to day. These guys are busting their ass, working so hard, and bro, the money is just trash. Like, guys aren't really making any money until you get to that highest level. So when she was like, "No, I really don't care to see you fight. If it's something you really, really want to do, I'll support you, but it's not really what I want from my husband. And I was like,
Right.
okay. And I respected that, and, kind of just shut it down and found my path more into coaching when I was cornering Dennis. So I would corner Dennis. I cornered Ray Cepho, cornered Martin Campman. And then, really Brad Tavares kind of gave me my coaching break, if you will. So I had that little group of guys, but those guys kind of helped me grow into the coach that I am today.
Gotcha. So it just like kind of built up over time of
For
everything
sure,
that,
bro. Just certainly definitely a byproduct of just being here day in and day out, and then really just having the wherewithal to want to learn. And like, look, man, I never wanted to be like a specialty coach. I didn't want to be like, oh, I'm really good in this field, right? Like, I was always in here grappling and doing jujitsu and everything else. But it got to the point where I wanted to be better at holding pads. I wanted to learn how to wrestle more. I wanted to learn how to, wrap hands and be a better corner. So when you did go on the road, like when Dennis would fight, he didn't have to bring 3 or 4 coaches. He just could bring me, and I could
right.
do my job, So
Right.
that really helped me a lot over the time, I think, to help me become an all-around better MMA coach.
Gotcha. Now, what do you think about this weekend's fights? Main event, like what? Because I think it's weird that the narrative for Islam before his fight with Oliveira is, oh, he's not good enough and he shouldn't be here. He doesn't have enough fights. And now he's going against the number 1 pound for pound guy and he beats Oliveira, and it's like, oh, Volkanovski shouldn't be in there. Like, how did the narrative shift that quickly after one fight? That's crazy to me.
Well, you just remember, like, in MMA, it's always a recency bias.
Right, right.
It's
Absolutely.
always that way, bro. Like, you'll see betting lines of, I remember when Giga was fighting Calvin Kattar, and this is no slight on Giga. I think Giga's a great prospect, but Calvin Kattar was a 2-1 underdog against Giga because of the style, the way that Giga beat Edson Barboza. So you start
Right.
lining up MMA math, and you're like, wait a minute, Cater's going to beat the shit out of Giga, but because of the last fight Giga had, it was like, oh, well, this guy's inherently the favorite. So a lot of the recency bias to me comes out with MMA. And we saw that with Cyril Gane and Francis.
Yeah.
Cyril
Yeah.
Gane was doing his thing. Francis murders Stipe Miocic, best
Right.
he's ever looked, arguably the greatest heavyweight to ever do it. And then Francis is out for a little while, and then Gane is doing his thing, and everybody's like, "Oh, Gane's going to kill Francis." Well, Francis beat the dude on one leg. So could you imagine what Francis could do to the guy if he was healthy?
Right.
So it's that recency bias to me is always going to kind of have its day in MMA. And look, man, Islam is absolutely no slouch. We're seeing what this guy's capable of doing every time out. And I think the hype is warranted. I really do, man. I think this guy's a real deal. He's somebody that, funny enough, that Ali's been talking to me about for, I don't know, 7-8 years now. Ali's been on high on this guy forever. He's like, you think Khabib's good? Wait till you see Islam. And I've been
Yeah.
hearing this dude's name for a long, long time. And now it's front and center. We're able to see what he's able to do. And on the flip side of that, man, how can you not love Volkanovski? Like,
Right.
this guy's looking to challenge himself and put his unblemished record out there, right? I think he's undefeated, isn't he?
I think he's 25-1. I think he lost like his second fight
Maybe,
ever,
yeah,
maybe.
maybe he's lost one, but the
Not in the
streak in
UFC.
a row, yeah,
Yeah, he's
not,
like
yeah,
18 and
exactly,
0 in the UFC or something like that.
right? Like his streak, right? Like, good on him for looking to try to accomplish something and become that number 1 pound for pound guy, solidify that number, and challenge himself. And arguably, the scariest guy in the UFC
Right.
roster is Islam
Right.
Makhachev, right? So, I mean, you got to love both of these guys and what they're trying to accomplish in this sport. And I'm glad Volkanovski's moving up and he's going to go challenge himself, because in a lot of ways, man, I think he does have a good skill set and something that can be able to throw some wrinkles and beat a guy like Islam with his movement. He's
Right.
not easy to track because he has the ability to strike from both stances. I think that would be more my game plan if I was on the Volkanovski side, is, try to pot shot this guy 1-2, angles off and move, and then land the big shots when he throws a heavy left hand and falls over and misses. You want to try to be able to counter that.
Yeah, I was talking to Ray a few months back, right before the Oliveira fight, and he was telling me he trains, and Ray knows kickboxing better than anybody, right?
For sure.
And he was saying, dude, this guy would be a a high level elite kickboxer with his skills now, not even focusing on it, with his skills now. And I was like, okay, Ray, like I trust what Ray says, but I just didn't like, I thought maybe he was hyping him up because he trained him. And I don't feel like anybody knows how good Islam is on his feet because he's so good at getting guys off their feet, like, do you think, do you think the wrestling is going to be a factor within the fight, or do you think it's going to have to stay on the feet and we're going to see just how good Islam is on his feet?
Well, I think it's going to be important for Islam to keep a blend, to feint that level change, to make it a threat, whether you intend it or not, right? Like
Yeah.
I always call it like a show of force, when in the military terms, like when you see like a flyby or
Right.
somebody going, buzz down with
Yeah.
their F-22 Raptor, it's like, hey man, look, we have these weapons, and it's a show of force, and it's going to open some things up. So for Islam, whether he intends on grappling or wrestling, I think it's important to at least show it, to kind of collect the data of what the defense will be for Volkanovski, and maybe fit in every once in a while just to make him like feel that pressure and feel that understanding of what you're capable of when it comes to the grappling game. That's going to get some respect when it comes to the lead hands, right? That lead hand starts to drop, then you can set up a lot of your overhand series stuff and your fit-ins. So if he wants to go out there and just kickbox with them, I think that opens up the door for Volkanovski a little bit more. But Islam does have that striking, man. He can crack, especially at a weight class a little bit higher. For Volkanovski, we'll see if he can take that pressure.
Who are you picking for the fight? I'm not going to say who are you putting your money on because I don't want you to get in trouble for that. We've got enough of that going on right now.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
That's crazy.
Um, you know, this is kind of a funny way to look at it. I think Islam will win, but I think there's value on Volkanovski as a 3-1 underdog.
Hmm.
Why not throw $100 on Volkanovski? And if he loses, I'm okay losing that $100.
Right.
But when are you ever going to get Volkanovski as a 3-1 favorite or underdog?
Right. Right. Such a
Definitely
big
not in the
difference.
featherweight division, right? Definitely not in the
No.
featherweight
Yeah.
division. But would you be surprised on Sunday if we're talking about Volkanovski winning that fight? Like, would you be
No.
that surprised? No, I don't think so
No.
either. So in my mind, I think that there's some value there, and I would take Volkanovski at that dog money.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be hard to get underneath too because he is a little bit shorter and they're standing straight up, and I think there's gonna be maybe some issues that a lot of people, not a lot of non wrestlers, probably won't foresee as far as the wrestling. I think that's kind of spreading that line too, as people think he's just gonna dominate him in the grappling, and I don't know. I don't know if I see that, but maybe.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's an interesting style when it comes to the Dagestani guys, how much they're predicated on the backside wrist rides,
Hmm.
and the killing the legs and everything else. A guy maybe short in stature with a smaller anatomy, extremities, right? Like it might be harder for Islam to kind of hunker down and weigh on a guy that's kind of built like a roly poly.
Right.
So it'll be interesting. And do I think that Islam can't take down Volkanovski and shut it down? No, but I think it would be interesting just to see kind of how he plays it with Volkanovski's size and anatomy.
Gotcha. And then, do you have any dog in the fight with the co-main event with Rodriguez and Emmett?
Not really. Obviously, we fought against Josh Emmett with Dan Ige. Went to a decision. Really good fight, close fight. I thought Dan won round two. Round three was kind of a toss-up round. I felt like we should have and could have done more in round three. And Emmett came away with the win. So, in the Cater fight, I thought the Cater fight and Emmett was very, very close fight. Could have gone either way in that one too. So,
Right.
but I think the narrative's being ran like Josh doesn't really deserve this opportunity. I think that's false. I think Josh has done enough
Right.
to get there. And Yair's coming off really just one win off of Ortega, kind of off a fluke injury, but he lost his last fight against Max Holloway. So I
Hmm.
think you can make that argument for both sides if you're going to say Josh doesn't deserve it. Well, Yair's coming off of this kind of unheralded win, but he got the win. But man, I think it's going to be a very interesting fight in the regards of Yair's movement and kind of his offbeat rhythms when it comes to the kicking game. And what I felt we could have done better in the Ige fight was throw the left head kick more to occupy Josh's right hand and the power hand. And Dan doesn't have a great left head kick, but he has a serviceable one, something that we've been working on. But Yair has a great one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that almost like that jab, same side, left high, snap kicks, even they're not really intended to knock you out, but they're intended to occupy your hand placement.
Right.
Um, and then I think as well, Yair chopping that lead leg of Josh. I think that was the leg that was compromised in the Shane Burgos fight that he was out with a knee injury. I can imagine Yair looking to try to chop that lead leg, especially a guy who's front foot heavy and throws heavy, heavy leather, you know. And on the flip side, I think it's going to be important for Josh to implement some wrestling. I really do.
Yeah.
I think when you go back and watch the Frankie Edgar fight against Yair, I think that Frankie implemented the wrestling and really tired the guy out and took away a lot of his weapons. You know, and it's hard to kick somebody when you're laying on your back. You know what I mean? Take away
Right.
those weapons and tire a guy out. So, and then of course, when you wrestle a dude and you get him tired, they're more, I think, more susceptible to be taken down if they're worried about being taken down if they're kicking a lot. So that might slow down the kick game of Yair if you're Josh. Get out there and wrestle him a little bit, make him feel like, hey man, for 5 rounds, I'm gonna look to take your ass down. It's gonna be a fucking gritty, grimy fight. Changes the element a little bit.
Right. Changes what he's got to do.
Yep.
What do you know what Francis is going to do? I know you haven't spoken about it too much, but do you like actually personally know?
Kind of. I wouldn't say that I know for a fact or this is what we're doing, you know. But you know, we went to dinner last night and just kind of just me and him, and we didn't really talk a whole lot of business, to be honest with you. We
Right.
just we're almost catching up. But you know, I think for what I gathered from him, in the box first and try to make that payday, get that grab, and
Yeah.
then you know, we have a lot of options after that. You
Yeah.
know, we even talked about, you know, hey, we'll go next time and go back to the UFC. You know, that opportunity is always going to be available for us. It's not like we left the UFC and it's like fuck these guys. You
Yeah.
know, it's a business. It's happened before. Guys have left and come back. You know, at the end of the day, I think both parties would be open to that. But right now, I think because of his name value, go out there and fight one of the big three. Go put on a good boxing match and go make that money, and then let's see what you want to do next.
Are you saying fight one of the big three guys in boxing?
Yeah, Joshua, Wilder, or
Wilder and
Fury.
Fury. Yeah. What is your opinion? Because I know Francis has obviously taken a pretty hard stand, but I don't know if I've heard you talk about what with the fighter pay with the UFC. Do you think their business model is pretty, and if you can't speak on this, don't, but do you think their business model is pretty fair to the guys, or do you think it's going to take like a PFL or a Bellator or somebody else, creating some competition for them and taking some of those world champions away to get them to change some things up? Because when I hear things like there's ring girls that make more money than the fighters, that's when I'm like, okay, well, maybe we should take a look at that, because that's not okay. Like, I don't think they provide
Right.
any value to the sport at all. That's me
Right.
personally.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that with that particular stat, it's kind of misleading in the fact that like Francis made 600,000 um flat, you know, versus Cyril Gahn. I don't know what his pay-per-view numbers were, but that's mainly because Francis only fought once in that year,
Right.
right? So yes, Ariani made 1 million annually for the entire year, but you know, had Francis been healthy and we fought more, he would have
Right.
made far more money. That so we have
Right.
to be fair. We have to be fair to that regard,
Sure.
because that stat is very misleading to me.
Sure.
Um, and
Absolutely.
now you know it all becomes very relative. I think depending on the fighter. So you know, $8 million is a lot of money to a lot of people,
Yeah.
right? But when you feel like what your value is for that company, or you feel that on the open market you're with triple or quadruple that figure, I think that's when it becomes one of those things where you have the power to negotiate, or you have the opportunity to try to make and incite some change. And you know, in an intimate moment with Francis, just me and him, like in the car driving back from that meeting with Dana and Hunter, you know, he brought that up. He's like, man, it's not really about the money for me. It's about the opportunity to make some change.
Yeah.
You know, that he had some leverage there. I would have loved to seen some more guys kind of stick with him. But you know, again, to each is their own. They have their families to feed. they have their legacies that they want to keep intact and the things that they want to do. But this is something that he's been very passionate about. And dude, I love him and I respect him for it. Like I told him yesterday, man, because he asked, he's like, are you bummed that we're not? I was like, I'm bummed that we're not competing against John Jones. Of
Right,
course, like
right, right.
I wanted that opportunity to compete, but
Sure.
I'm not defeated. I'm not sad. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, like I know I trust in Francis and his process, and I think that that's the main thing is that we stay together as a team and we have each other's backs, and we really just kind of, I guess, follow the dreams of each other, right? Like he's always wanted to box. So
Right.
why not do it now and take this opportunity to go out and try to get strike while the iron's hot.
What would you change if you were looking at, like, you're kind of thrown in the middle of this whole deal and you've probably seen the ins and outs of all these contracts at some capacity. What, if anything, within the UFC, like, that people talk about? Because, like you said, there are misleading stats out there everywhere, and you really need to get a Dana and somebody on the other end to, like, sit down and discuss it. But I don't think we're going to get that. What do you think are some things, like, you guys need to switch this up?
Well, I mean, I definitely think maybe having like in the NFL where they have like a player representative or somebody to help and speak on their behalf of things that these fighters need. Um, I think that would help. Obviously the insurance situation is something that I see quite prevalent in MMA, where a guy gets hurt and they're continuing to do camp or they continue to fight so they can get the insurance. I think
Mm,
that's sad, man.
right.
And I'm not saying, like, I've also seen the UFC help fighters out. I've seen that.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's fair to say that they haven't done this, and they
Right.
don't do this, because they have helped out fighters to get surgeries or stem
Right.
cells or to do things, so, but it's also not across the board
And it's not a
either.
policy either. It's
They don't have to do that,
yeah.
but they do it out of the goodness of their heart for certain situations, right? Where it's
I
not
guess that
like
makes sense.
everybody gets that. Um, I think for me, man, it's one of those things where the UFC has a business model, and they've ran this business model for however long, and I just don't see them changing that business model anytime soon, unless there was a big lawsuit or some litigation or something that came down the line where they were forced to do that.
Right.
So in the meantime, I think it is what it is, and they're the king. They don't say they have a monopoly on this, but they're going to be number one for a long time, and they stay true to that business model, and that's what they're going to keep doing. Because what happened with Francis was, if they did the deal that Francis wanted, that would break the mold, and they weren't
Mm,
willing to break that mold. But on the flip side of things, Francis understood that he wasn't going to get all of his demands met. He
right.
said he wanted one or two of those things met. Some of the issues that were some of the sticking points, excuse me, was, um, if Francis were to lose to John Jones, where does his contract go from there? And bro, it was a huge drop in pay, huge
Mm,
drop in pay. So he's like, yeah, you might, I'm fighting arguably the greatest mixed martial artist to ever live,
right.
but if I lose, I have no protection. I go
Right.
from making 8 million to 1 million. He's like, that's fucking trash, you
Right.
know. Especially when you look at like the pay scale of what Alistair Overeem was making 6-7 years ago. Overeem was making 800,000 a fight flat. So he's telling me your evaluation to me is 1 million. 8 years later, a guy that I knocked out into the next fucking stratosphere, right? So you're gonna pay me 1 million if I lost to John Jones. So
Right.
think about that. He he fights John, he might make 10 million with pay per view, but if he lost, he's back down to 1 million. So you're looking at $11 million net off of two fights if you were to lose, versus
Right.
going to box, he's gonna make where 15, 20 million
Right.
flat, flat. So he's like, it just makes more sense for me to go do this.
Yeah, and that's a good point you bring up too with the injury thing. I didn't think of it, but because, like, every practice facility in football is owned or operated by the NFL. So if that was the thing with Carr, right? They didn't want him to go in and fake an ankle injury because then they got to pay him $40 million. So that makes sense. Like, I guess they insure guys if they're trained at the PI, and that's it, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't even know if they're insured there. Like, I don't
Really?
know that, and I don't want to speak on something I don't know 100%. But
Okay.
um, you know, I know when Francis injured his knee that, but again, like Francis is different because he felt like the UFC was kind of out to get him. But
Right.
like he didn't he went and did his MRI and did everything outside of that scope. But he did a lot of his rehab over at the PI, so they knew about it. He did his surgery in LA. But I don't think the UFC covered really anything that had to do with any of the surgery stuff.
Gotcha. Huh. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. All right, man. Well, hey, I'm gonna let you go real quick. Two things. One, who you got for the Super Bowl?
Um, I'm gonna go with the Eagles. I think they're the
Really?
more complete team.
Mm,
And I think when you break down the Eagles on offense, I really like the way that they're structuring their offense off of Jalen Hurts and his strong suits off the RPOs.
yeah.
The kid really flourished in the system of Oklahoma under
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley off the RPOs, and the ability to run the ball for
Right.
him.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
think that as from a standpoint of my dad being a defensive coordinator, most of the time you don't account for the quarterback. You have a free rush or you have a free guy in the middle and your mic. Now with the way the NFL is today, that you have athletic quarterbacks, you have to compensate for matchups with the quarterback. You have to spy
Right.
them. You have to roll containment. You have to do certain things in elaborate defenses. I think that Jalen Hurts, it will be the mismatch where those 3rd and 12s where you should be getting off the field and he scrambles and breaks one loose and runs for
Mm,
15. Those are the types of quarterback play that I think will ultimately win the Super Bowl. Now, the only reason why I say that is because I know Mahomes is nursing that ankle injury,
right.
and he's also a guy who's very mobile, can move the
Same way. Yeah.
pocket same way. But with that limited mobility off the ankle, I love what Josh Sweat and Cox and Brandon Graham, all those defensive ends, that defensive line of Philly, that straight edge pass rush up and then kind of keep everything in that pocket where you allow your defensive tackles to scramble the eggs and get to your quarterback. So you maintain containment. So I think this game's won by the Eagles' defensive line and the quarterback play of Jalen Hurts.
Cool. Cool. And second thing, are you watching Yellowstone? You a Yellowstone guy?
No, my wife is though, big Yellowstone fan. She is.
Oh,
I've never watched one episode.
oh man, you got to get into it. They're doing all
All
the
right.
prequels now, 1883, 1923.
All right. All right.
Pretty
I'll
good.
check it out.
All right.
Was that on Paramount, right?
Yeah, the prequels are on Paramount Plus, and I think the Yellowstone, you'll have to watch it on something else. I can't remember what it's on.
Dope.
So,
I'll have to
but
check that out.
it's pretty cool. Yeah, just ask her. But all right, well, I guess we're not going to talk about Yellowstone then. Nope. I'll see you, brother. Thank you, man. I
All
appreciate
right,
it.
brother. I'll see you soon. My pleasure.
Yep.